today. So,
Hello.
we usually have a countdown, but because I'm in charge, Jerome's not here. We didn't get one.
Well, let's just sit quietly for 30 seconds.
30, 29, 28, 27, 26. and
Fast forward 10,
more.
9.
3, 2, 1.
Before we get started, we are covering our core competencies number 3 and 4 today. To those of you watching out there, we would love to hear from you. Go ahead, leave whatever you need, questions you may have, join in the conversation in the comments. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like button and all of that good stuff. It's the only way we know that we are doing a good job. So also, hi to 102 students who are watching. Hello. I hope your class is going or is going to be soon, and I hope you're excited. So this will be used for content for 102 as well. So, all right, let's get moving in, shall we? Let's dive right in. Core competencies. One of the just so you know, we're going to go over them. We're going to dive in. We will quickly highlight the differences between ACC, PCC, and MCC, but we're not going to live in that space. That'll be a very quick note in any of these. And then we're going to go through each sub competency on the core competencies. So beginning number 3. Anthony, do you want to read number 3?
Also, for those of you who watched our last video, we were on section A, the foundation. We moved past that now, and we're moving on to section B, which is focusing on co-creating the relationship. So you need that foundational aspect before you can even begin co-creating that relationship. But we'll be moving on to core competency 3, establishes and maintains agreements. So that's defined as partners with the client and relevant stakeholders to create clear agreements about the coaching relationship, process, plans, and goals. Establishes agreements for overall coaching engagement as well as those for each coaching session. So it's all about just what did we agree to? What are we talking about in terms of the coaching session agreement and the entire coaching program agreement, whatever that might look like, doing a 10 session or maybe a one-off. But we'll dive into the sub-competency now. Number 1, explains what coaching is and is not, and describes the process to the client and relevant stakeholders. Do you guys find that a lot of new clients know what coaching is right off the bat?
No.
Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think even students aren't really sure what it is until they come in.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I know I didn't.
Some of them might be, maybe, but no.
So what do people tend to think coaching is, but it's really not? What are their first sort of preconceived notions about it?
I'm going to give you all my expertise and advice in 3 sentences. I tell you to jump and you ask me how high.
Right. And then I think people, have a background in something else like sports or fitness. So I think people, the first thing they see with me, it's like, oh, what sport do you coach? Or coach it? Oh, okay. Well, I see, you work out. You're going to tell me, just like Misha said, you're going to tell me what to do. So I think that's the biggest misconception. You hear coaching, and naturally, if you don't know what it is, you're going to relate it to what you know about the word. And so it's like someone who's going to give me the playbook, and I do it.
Yeah. And Steve just said, imagine they think it's therapy. Some people think it's therapy. Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Or, yeah, a cheap replacement for therapy.
The non-covered by insurance thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which it's not.
Right.
Not yet.
But that's part of this competency, is that you going into this, before anything's written down on paper and signed, people have to understand what it is they're agreeing to and what is not included in the contract. So that way, if for some reason the client ever wants to go beyond the scope of coaching, you can say, well, what we agreed to when we maintain our agreements per our contract, per what me and the stakeholder agreed to, or me and the sponsor agreed to, that's not coaching. So let's try to keep it within the coaching space. It's probably
as well for anybody watching. Pop in our comments. I may not be able to right away, but at least after the video, we will be able to get those in there. So they mentioned that they don't want you to just read the ICF definition of what coaching is and is not. They want you to be sort of being able to express it in your own words. And that is something that they look for in this for sure. So
we move on to number 2 then?
Let's do it.
And then I'll talk a little less. Reaches agreement about what is and what is not appropriate in the relationship, coaching relationship, what is and what is not being offered, and the responsibilities of the client and relevant stakeholders. So the clients do have responsibilities, but what are those responsibilities?
I think this is a bridge off of that first part, right? Where they're not sure. And that's part of us telling them what that is, the education on our part. So that's letting them know who is in charge, right, of this action and the accountability. And then also making it known from the start, once you said, now this is, let's establish what coaching is and what is not. So now you don't have to worry about that, because before you agreed and before we started this coach-client relationship, you already knew up front what it was and what it's not. So I think the biggest part is discussing that up front so anyone understands. And it helps coaches as well. It keeps you out of that place of liability because, oh, well, you didn't tell me that. Yes. Yeah, we went over that.
That was number 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 2. Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yep.
By the way, we're looking at the sub competencies, which you can find on the ICF Core Competency page. I'm going to pop that link in there.
Yeah.
Right.
This is all part of maintaining.
It's part of
establishing
this number
agreements.
3, establishing. And I think all of this kind of is fairly straightforward in this, but I think that also dovetails right into our next one. Is there anything else we want to cover in 2?
Well, I think that in this process, we want to highlight that on the exams, from what we've been told from some of us that have taken it, that stakeholder process is also a big highlight in there, that we want to acknowledge that relationship with that coaching agreement and contract on those standards, on what that means and what it doesn't mean.
Mm-hmm.
I also think if you want to know more, because I know there's a lot of questions around this sort of thing in the exam and in other things, what like the stakeholders and coaching with sponsors. And so we do have a video. And if you go to our YouTube channel and you go to the ICF 101 playlist, within that playlist of videos, there is definitely information on coaching with sponsors and stakeholders and how that works and all of that. As well.
Code of ethics as well is a good place to find out what is and is not appropriate in a coaching relationship. It doesn't really define it here.
Absolutely.
But let's go into number 3. Reaches agreement about the guidelines and specific parameters of the coaching relationship, such as logistics, fees, scheduling, duration, termination, confidentiality, and inclusion of others. So the brass and tacks, so to speak, of coaching.
I think that a lot of people who are in the coaching profession can avoid a lot of headaches when you put all of this in your agreement, your actual contract, like from the beginning, what is coaching, what is not coaching, what is appropriate in the relationship, what's being offered, what's not being offered. And number 3, I mean, when are you going to be having your appointments, or how are you scheduling your appointments? Are you using a Google Calendar link or whatever? I think all of that, if you have it in your agreement and you go over it during your very first intake session with your clients, you're going to avoid a lot of problems. And you're going to be following the core competencies, which, woohoo!
I'm so glad you said and go over it too, because I think that's such a critical part of this is remembering not to just assume that your client has read and understood everything, even if they signed it. Just making sure we really just give them, get a verbal confirmation as well as that written confirmation of just what is going to happen within the session. So there's that clear understanding.
And I'm gonna be, Troy always says I'm spicy. Okay. So all of you watching on Facebook, some of you know when you come into your 3-day class for 101 and 102, you have not read everything. You signed it, but you didn't read everything because we repeat ourselves over and over again. Doesn't mean we don't love you, but start reading things yourselves, because you know what? If you're not reading things and your clients aren't reading things, you're gonna have some issues. Start reading before you sign.
And I'm the one who wrote those, so I've inserted some crazy things in there.
Anthony's like, please make sure you read it.
Yes.
It's gonna be karma. Karma's gonna hit you in the butt. You're gonna get a client, and they, I'm just saying.
What is our running joke in the office? Adults don't read. Like, we just have like so many examples of it.
Yes. All your answers are found in the contract. And also, I mean, if you don't do this, there's going to come a time where it's like, oh, I wish I would have included this in the contract. It's always happened. So just do it all at the beginning.
It just really clarifies and identifies who you are, who you're not, what those fees are going to be, what they're not going to be, what you're willing to do as a coach, what they've got to do as a client. I mean, it's just really going to set the standard of what that expectation is in your coaching session.
Steve writes, people should read, you can sign away the right to your firstborn. That is in our coaching agreements for skills.
No. Ours is the first million. You have to give us your first million.
I think too, just one of the things to know that I've learned in having contracts and everything is your contracts are probably going to start in one place and you're going to think, yeah, this is exactly how I want things. But you'll probably have experiences along the way that make you flex into new spaces in that contract.
Oh, yeah.
Learning spaces. I think a lot of us start with a much more liberal refund policy and reschedule policy, and as we learn that
become more conservative,
rigid as you go along.
Yes,
and that's okay, right? We learn and it changes and flexes, and then anytime that you're going to change that or revise your agreement, we need to of course go over that again with our clients in writing and make sure they are aware of what is happening.
So agreement to that conflict, right? You usually narrow it down because you don't want to get into resentment. You're setting boundaries and you want to live up to those boundaries.
Yes.
All right. Up
number
next.
4. Yeah. Partners with the client and relevant stakeholders to establish an overall coaching plan and goals.
Communication.
From the beginning.
Communication. What are we here for? What do you want? What is the timeline that you foresee? And let's go from there. But I think that one is cut and simple communication. And stakeholders too, for people watching too, that's people who are involved with the process as well. I.e. for me as a youth coach, a lot of times that's parents, counselors, coaches, whoever is paying for the service. So it's just making sure that you have everything set up in the beginning in terms of communication and who the coaching service is for. And that, I think, goes into that overall plan and goals and everything like that. And they can change once you start the relationship, but clear communication up front.
I'm glad you said that. I was just going to say, and they can change. And that's when, you set it up in one way. And as things start to evolve and things change, then you just let the stakeholders know, and I just like Mike, I work with kids. And so, I will communicate with the parents and say, you know what, we've had a reevaluation of what's important right now and want to check in with you all, make sure that's okay. I also have had times where I've been an organizational coach where someone's brought me in to work with their CEOs. And I didn't have to share everything, but I definitely had to keep those higher ups informed as to what me and what the client and I are working on. But it's important from the beginning to establish at least whatever your initial plan is, with the caveat that, hey, things will change.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, goals, if you take our class, should be SMART. So,
Smarter.
Smarter. Don't you forget.
That's important.
Don't forget.
Let's go ahead and move to the, I'm keeping an eye on time. We're not doing too bad for time, but
Yeah, we're good.
anything else in that space? I think it's pretty straightforward. We really cover that goals in our 101. So let's move to the next one. This next one I think is a little interesting.
Partners with the client to determine client-coach compatibility. So that brings an interesting topic to mind. Not every client is compatible with every coach and vice versa. And you might find out later into the coaching relationship rather than sooner. So that's something a coach always has to keep in mind.
You don't like me? What?
So I have a question in this space.
Yeah, because I think it's just not more than just that too. Yeah, go ahead.
You get into a coaching relationship, and you as the coach, for whatever reason, and this has happened to me, feel like maybe I'm not the best person to serve this client.
Yeah.
It is our duty, it is our responsibility to be transparent about that, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
according to our ethics.
Absolutely.
Our
Mhm.
ethics, yes, tell us to.
Well, I would caution, I mean, you don't have to share all the reasons why you're not compatible.
Right.
Correct.
But definitely finding a diplomatic way of allowing them to know that you don't feel like you're best to serve them.
Yeah, and that can be for
practice is a good term to get used to saying beyond my scope of practice.
Beyond my scope of
beyond my
practice.
scope of practice. I used that one time that it didn't go well. They were mad at me that I would not work with them when I already explained that to them, that this is beyond my scope of practice. This is not something I can work with. They were very upset with me. Brooke and I kind of interrupted. Go ahead, Brooke.
Oh yeah, no, they can. Also, though, I think that there have been times, especially with newer coaches, where there can be a moment of insecurity where you think, I am not good enough to work with this client. And I've heard coaches and had coaches share this where they were like, I just didn't feel like I was the best coach for them, but their client is content with them. And we're not talking about a situation where we're referring out, but a situation where that coach is sort of insecure, and it's an interesting space to be in. And I would just be transparent, right, as we had said, but also be willing to have that discussion and see what that client really wants.
Yeah, the important part of this, it says partners with the client to determine.
Yep.
So that's a two-person, multiple-person process, not just the coach trying to figure out in their own head, oh, maybe I'm not worthwhile, maybe I'm not a good coach. Have a discussion with the client, see how they are enjoying the coaching process and if they are meeting their goals.
The other piece too that I think that we're not thinking of, we're taking this very literally or very like big picture-y, but I think in a smaller realm, this can how do we work together as a coach and a client? So what works for you? What works for you in this coaching space? How are we working together compatibly? And it doesn't have to be this either we are, working together, we aren't, but it can be something where you establish with your client, when I have an observation, how would you like me to share that with you?
Right.
How would you like me to bring that up with you? And I think that this is when we're getting into a more nuanced space of compatibility, but it's actually us being curious and learning what's going to work for our clients so we can be compatible with them and work compatibly together. So I don't think we have to take it to this big, either we're great together or we aren't together, but we can bring it back to a smaller, more, little bit piece space where we're asking our clients, what makes us compatible? What will make this experience something that works for you in the little things that we do within the coaching space? And I think it's something that can keep happening throughout. And it's something that if we remain curious as a coach and curious about what works for our clients so that we can remain compatible and make the space one that is compatible with them. And I think this comes up again, but I think this is a first introduction, and it's an introduction in a way that we're establishing, okay, what works for you in this space? Because it's going to be different for different people.
Yep.
Well, it's also about not making assumptions. I mean, everybody in 101 knows, like, they walk in with sunglasses. We don't need to do anything about that, right? So how do you sit with yourself as a coach and allow your client to sit with themselves as a client in the same space without making assumptions that anything's personal or they're not comfortable or something needs to be changed or fixed, because nobody's broken.
I think we can move forward to the next one, shall we?
Yes.
We shall.
Number 6, partners with the client to identify or reconfirm what they want to accomplish in the session. So contrast that with number 4, where we talked about overarching plans and goals. Now we're talking about particular goals within the session. You first identify it, and then throughout the session, if things sort of deviate,
Rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the rabbit hole. Hey, it's okay. We can continue down this route, but as a reminder, we have 20 minutes left. Would you like to, and it's kind of this thought of they have a goal, right? And that's it. It definitely goes back to the last one. We want to be on the same page. So every now and again, that I call it the gentle check-in, right? Where I say in class, let's be real. It's an interruption, but because you have the accountability, or it's your responsibility rather, to keep the session on track, then let's make sure that we're not having one of those situations where we get to the end. How did you feel about the session? I don't know. I just felt like I kind of talked through some things. I don't know if I reached a goal. Well, that's okay. If we establish, 15 minutes ago, would you rather stay talking about this, or that open session contract, would you rather focus back on what the initial goal was? So goes back again, a lot of this one, really, core competency 3 is around this open communication.
I really, one thing that I thought, or sorry, Jen, to interrupt. One thing I found really interesting too in this space, which is we talked about this rabbit hole and reconfirming, but we're talking about, I want to bring it to that first piece, that identify piece, because one of the things they said is when a coach isn't performing well in this competency, one of the things they'll notice is that if you have a client that, let's say they want to lose weight, or well, not even that, they want to stick to a diet plan. Okay. So they want to stick to a plan for a diet, but they can't, and they keep failing and they keep failing. And if the coach keeps sticking with this, the client just saying, hey, I want to stick to a diet plan, they're not performing well, because a coach should be helping them to identify what it is that is keeping them from sticking to that diet plan. And that's that coaching the person, not the problem. And I think that that's where this identify piece comes in. Jen, I interrupted.
So a question in this space is, what do you guys do when you have a session where the client cannot get clear on what they want to accomplish or get out of the session? Do you continue to drive towards that, or do you get consent to more free flow? I mean, what's your technique in that situation?
All of the above.
Just to be quick, so we don't stay too much time on this one, I will probably revisit the overall goal and try to figure out what can you do in this session to, progress the overall goal. And if they don't know, I don't know why we're having a coaching session.
I also know that we have a video on this as well. We absolutely do in our YouTube. So I'll try to dig it up and post it here so you can get a look at that. Also, sometimes the goal then becomes figuring out what the goal is. That's what your goal for this session is, figuring. I mean, that it becomes okay, well, we got to identify the next step, and we can start to ask into that. Ask into that, I don't know. Ask into that, I'm unsure, because that's where the answers are, right?
The other thing is that the word goal might not align with them. It might be, how would you like to feel by the end of this session? Or what changes do you feel you want to be making, if any, during this week to come? So it's not always a goal. It's not the word goal. And, I've often had, most of the time my clients come with something they want to talk about, but they don't necessarily know what that would look like by the end of the session. So it could be a feeling.
And then also I think that's great. They come in with something, and it also can be something, it usually ends up being something a little different. And that's where this identify piece and the reconfirm comes in really well, right? Because they can come in with one goal, and as we start to talk it through, it can become something else. And that's when we come into this reconfirm piece. And I think it can be something that kind of works, but we do want to at some point, limit how much we keep cycling between identify, confirm, and settle on something, right? But sometimes it can be 5 minutes in, sometimes it can be 20 minutes in, right? Sometimes it could be 30 minutes in. We give a rough outline of timing, but that's not a hard and fast rule. It can vary person to person. Next one, shall we?
Yes.
Number 7, partners with the client to define what the client believes they need to address or resolve to achieve what they want to accomplish in the session. A little bit of a mouthful there, but essentially, we're talking about how it is you're going to achieve your goal. What needs to happen in between the coaching sessions to get what you want.
So something else I want to point out, that notice there's just slight nuances in these transitions. They're all based on really the overreaching, which we opened up with establishing and maintaining agreements. So if you always keep that in mind on what this area of the 3 points, whatever we're working on, that is the different nuanced and different ways we interact with our clients. Okay, go ahead.
That's it for me.
Oh, that's it for you.
Well, so this one is similar to the last one, because this one is a focus on the session agreement and what needs to be addressed to achieve the session agreement.
Yes. And so but we have to, when we break down, I really suggest watching that session agreement video, because the session agreement is more than one piece, right? It's that, what do we want to work on today? How will we know when we have achieved that? What does that look like? And then what are the other 2 pieces, Lisa? Or me? There's
Tell
2
me
more.
what you just said again, and
it's like a 4-part. I have it somewhere.
So while you think of that, I want to just say the difference for me between number 6 and number 7 is that number 6, we're identifying what they want to accomplish, and a lot of people for them that term is the problem. But I think 7 is more about the person. We're helping them define what they believe is needed to be, like we're going into more of their core beliefs, what's important to them, what's not important to them.
So when you hear partnership, that's where I was thinking about when, Brooke, you asked me your question. Sorry. When you think about how we partner with our client, what comes up for us coaches in that statement? What's going on there?
Collaboration.
Tell me more.
Tell me more.
I mean, just partnering with the client to discover what it is they're wanting to address. And if they don't know, facilitating further to find out what's underneath, like Brooke said, that I don't know.
Which I think builds from that communication. When we start from the session initially, right? That communication, when we build that space of now we're working together in this partnership, that means now we've clearly defined some things in the beginning. And when that communication, when I do that from the start, they're going to trust me a little bit more. And now I can go back to what I said in the beginning. So I think that comes from that clear communication. That's partnership. It's, they're in charge, they're leading the way, but we're finding the spaces together and we're getting to a common ground.
Right. And it also doesn't mean we're agreeing or disagreeing. We're partnering with them. We're kind of on the same wavelength, but it's their experience. We're not here to deny it. We're not here to elaborate. We're here to support them in their experience without judgment.
And being curious.
Absolutely.
And interested.
Yeah.
Instead of interesting. Yeah.
Not interesting.
Okay. I have figured out that the 4 parts are, just so you know, my brain. So the biggest 2 that we teach in ACC and that one-on-one training is what we just spoke of. What is the goal of the session? How will we know when we've achieved our goal? But there's 2 more pieces to that. And this is why does that achieving this goal matter? That emotional relevance and tapping into that. And then the 4th piece is what needs to be addressed, or who do you need to be to accomplish this goal? So essentially that's coming back to that, okay, how are we going to do this? A little bit more of that piece, but also on a level, that person level, that personal level, less about we talk about the goal, but then we're bringing it into that emotional relevance and then to what's going on inside them that they need. Who do they have to be in order to achieve this? Essentially.
Yeah.
So those pieces are more, this is one of those flexing into PCC spaces, right? But still important to know. So we won't live there, but just wanted to bring it up quickly.
Let's
Number
move
8.
on to number 8.
Yeah.
Partners with the client to define or reconfirm measures of success for what the client wants to accomplish.
That's number 9.
Sorry.
Yeah. It looks almost the same, but it's reconfirm measures of success for what the client wants to accomplish in the coaching engagement or individual session. So how are we going to know you've even accomplished your goals? That's what it means to be.
Wait, that's still the one showing on the screen is number 7.
That's number 7. So partners define, reconfirm,
And
we find it.
And while Brooke is pulling it up, I think that's kind of linked back to that one where we talk about the rabbit hole. Like it's that clear path, almost a GPS following it here when you notice that it's getting off track, just to check in to see. And that's part of that reconfirming, right? Where are you now, as opposed to, and every now and again, just really leaning into your client. How are you feeling just as a pit stop? How are you feeling now as compared to when we first started the session around that session goal? So I think that's more just really staying on track with where the client is as we move through this process.
And it comes to the client and their definitions too. What does success mean to them? We can't really reconfirm measures of success until we know what success means for them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the M part of the SMART goals, is measurable. Let's skedaddle on over to the number 9. Partners with the client to manage the time and focus of the session.
We out of time. See you next week.
Yeah.
Well, I will say from my own experience, I prefer to hear, so we have about 10 minutes left, because I have been caught in coaching sessions and in therapy sessions with someone saying, okay, we got like 2 minutes. See ya. Have a good day. I'm like, right. Well,
yeah, that's tough, right? It's like, whoa, wait a minute. And that's why that last one, right? Reaffirm it and just that gentle check-in of, hey, we're about halfway through the session. How are you feeling? That helps smooth it over when you do run out of time. Yeah. So I think it still goes back to this part of really communicate with your client in this journey, because that's abrupt. If you, even in a conversation, when you're talking to somebody, oh, I got to go. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. That hurts. So I think it's that clear communication.
That one of those things where we want to establish it early on. So you can be something, just so you know, want to let you know in our sessions, I'm gonna mind our time. So we're not gonna respect your time. And it's something I'll say at the beginning of a meeting. I want to respect everybody's time here. So we're gonna move quickly through this, each piece. And it's just my sort of way of saying in a meeting situation that, hey, if we have to redivert or come back to things, everybody's gonna be on the same page to table that and do so. There are other ways to do that in a coaching session, of course, but those gentle reminders are very important. It might be one of those things where we discuss what works for you as the client. For you as the client, I do it, or you as the coach, I'm going to remind you probably about 10 minutes before the session's over. I'm going to, and just sort of maybe letting them know ahead of time to expect that we're going to bring it back to that time. I was a coach that let things run long for a while, and I learned that I cannot do that anymore, right? And I changed my whole process for that, because otherwise I learned clients and I could be in a room for, an hour and a half and have only paid for an hour. And that's not what we want. So
I like Steve's comment, the 25 plus minutes Italian goodbye. Yeah, it was the French style too.
Another way of doing that, though, too, is recognizing who your client is. If they're someone who needs more time to unpack whatever it is as you're coming to that closure, then you, of course, buffer that time. Instead of 10 minutes, you might give them 15 minutes if they're that Italian goodbyer, as Steve said there. Or perhaps you have a client that has less words to say, then you can, shortchange it to a shorter time frame.
There's also another piece of this, which I don't think we touched on as much, is the focus of the session.
I was just going to say that.
And as you lose the focus of the session, you also lose the time. And that's why sessions take longer than expected, because the focus isn't there, which is the entire reason why the session contract exists, because from the beginning of the session, you and the client partner to set that focus. And whenever you start to rabbit hole, we already had that conversation, then you can maybe reassess the focus, decide, do you guys want to move in another direction, or should we get back on track to the topic at hand?
Well, and I want to just add to that, and I know we can go on to the next one, but just from the beginning, we talked about having a coaching agreement. In the coaching agreement and in your intake session, it's also very good and helpful to state, part of my role as a coach is to keep us focused. And I will ask you for consent if I feel like we're not, if we're straying. I'm going to say, hey, this is what I'm hearing you say, and are you wanting to be here, or do you want to go back to what you were talking about in order to reach your goal by the end? Either way, I'm here for you. But I think it's important to have that in your agreement from the get-go of what your responsibility is as a coach.
All right, let's move on to number 10. Continues coaching in the direction of the client's desired outcome unless the client indicates otherwise. So,
And I think we've kind of covered this a few times. We've in this throughout. Yeah.
It's NATO, not attached to the outcome. NATO, not attached.
Not me, not mine.
Not me, not mine. There you go. Yep.
the coach also doesn't have a desired outcome at all. It's just the client's.
Well, we do want a testimonial, but I'm just
That's
kidding. Sorry.
And for you to pay for your sessions on time.
Oh yeah, well, before the session for me, Annie.
Ding.
All right, let's
All right.
finish off
Number
core
11.
competency number 3 with number 11. Partners with the client to end the coaching relationship in a way that honors the experience.
Before anybody speaks, I just want to say, remember, at some point, all of these coach-client relationships should end,
Yes.
right? We shouldn't be dependent. It should not become a codependent situation. So every coach should be coaching towards an eventual situation where your client can move forward to something else, to their next thing. We're not coaching to trap our clients to be stuck coaching with us for the rest of their lives. Okay. So when we say honors the experience, that can be a very beautiful thing, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean it's ending early. And that's all. You all, now I'm going to be quiet.
Don't
Beautifully
dishonor.
said.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. I don't know that there's much more to say on that one.
I will
Awesome.
say,
Ding.
yeah, and don't be afraid to, in any situation, whether it ends well or we're ending because we have to refer out. We can always do so in a way that is respectful and amicable and celebrates whatever has happened within the space.
Oh, thank God you're leaving. You mean like that?
Why?
No.
Maybe celebrate isn't the right word, but respects the space.
And-
And
No,
one
it was
another.
the right choice. I just played on it.
Because I've had coaching relationships that ended well and not well in both situations, where I've had the refer out, I've had this isn't the right space, and that can always be a tough conversation. But I think that we've always been able to come to a space where everybody understands, and that's sometimes it's bumpy getting through it, but we get there. Let's move forward to number 4. Here we go.
Core competency number 4 cultivates trust and safety. And the definition: partners with the client to create a safe, supportive environment that allows the client to share freely, maintains a relationship of mutual respect and trust. So this is not an antagonistic coaching relationship. And number 1, do you want to talk more about this?
The magic for me. This is that special sauce. This is the thing that often gets overlooked when we talk about coaching. Coaching becomes questions and goals and all of these things. And for me, this trust and safety, this is creating that safe space. And this is that magic. This is the magic in the coaching session for me, that the heart and soul, and everything else is happens within it. And this allows for anything powerful to happen. Is this number 4? So
Foundation.
off my soapbox.
But I do want to mention one thing, though, that coaches need to be aware of, is that it's as much as you are a good listener, as much as you are present, that doesn't automatically assume that people are going to feel that trust and safety from the get-go. You still have to foster it. You still have to cultivate it. And that for some people takes several sessions, and so for some people it happens in the first session, and some people it takes 6 months.
And
So to be
sometimes-
patient and not treat that as there's something wrong with you as a coach.
Right. And sometimes there's stages, like they'll go so far with you, and
Right.
they either, and maybe they don't trust themselves on how they're going to share that with you.
Yes.
Well, but you should not get into overthinking mode in that place.
Yeah.
And each sub competency, I think, is a little guide for us that allows us to cultivate this magical space. All right, next one. Shall we?
Someone else can read this time.
Oh,
Seeks to understand the client within their context, which may include their identity, environment, experiences, values, and beliefs.
If we could just hit the nail on the head with this one, I think so much of everything else that we seek to do in the coach-client relationship will go so much more smooth. Because this is like, and when Brooke was talking about this, is just so much of, and I said foundation, the cultivates trust and safety. It's almost like a step one. Let's start here before we even think that someone's going to be able to open up to us and let us see what's already inside. So number one is just so important when we can meet someone where they are, and that respect and empathy and all of that. So I think number one is super important.
Well, and that's, another thing we say in the class 101 class is that you don't have to, it's important to have that beginning part of the go learn, the greeting, the ownership, finding out, who are they, what's important to them, why is it important to them. I think when we rush things and we lose that opportunity for connection, then we're not gonna be able to cultivate the trust and safety.
and I really want to emphasize the seeks to understand, because
Yeah,
we don't want to assume, right? We don't want to assume anything about our client. So this is this curiosity piece. This is this, we have to know that our client's a human being that exists within a whole bunch of other, systems in their life, a bunch of different experiences, beliefs, identity, environment. And though there may be elements of them that remind us of ourselves, we cannot assume that anything that they are or their experience is the same as ours. So we have to be in this space of curiosity and seeking to understand and learn without that assumption. So critical. And really
not come from the aspect of, oh, I've done that, I already know all about that.
oh yeah, me too.
Or for clients in my marketing business, I would always get these very women that had a lot of things that reminded me of me, which is, a strong, independent woman who is maybe quirky, artsy, creative, and wants to be a little different and bring that piece forward. But I can't assume that because there are elements where we relate to one another, that I know everything about them and what they want. I have to be in a space of curiosity and learning, and really learning who they are as an individual. And that was really fun. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of this process, is learning about all the different elements.
It's boring if we know it all.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, we get to know something new, and it's a fun, creative space to just sort of be in with other people. So
Totally.
Okay.
Anything else in this space, or shall we move to the next?
I think go to the next, because I think it's going to incorporate it anyways.
Demonstrates respect for the client's identity, perceptions, style, and language, and adapts one's coaching to the client.
This is that compatibility piece too. It comes right back up. So that's why this is all underneath this this heading, right? The same heading of co-creating this relationship, because this is part of that as well.
This one is big. It comes up in class where coaches will say, well, I don't want to lose myself, or what about this or that? I say, it's not about losing yourself, but it's highlighting the client, right? And this is that idea where I stress the not me, not mine. And I always tell coaches, I say, notice how I am versus when I do a demo. I'm not acting. It's just I'm more neutral, because I want to meet. I don't want to smother the client with me. I want them to flourish. So the spotlight becomes the client. And that's part of that, Brooke, what you were saying. They may have different, the way their personality, all these things. I don't want to squash that with my personality. So I maintain a neutral position, right? And posture because they feel more comfortable. And I still have those chances where I meet in the middle. We, relax that solar. But at the same time, I don't want in any way me to smother them.
Mhm.
If we think about it as, we're both shining a light, right? But we don't want our light to shine brighter than our clients.
Absolutely.
So what we're doing is we're essentially, just dimming it down a little so that our client's light can shine in, and so we want that to happen, and then we have this mirroring, and this is where this style and language, and we begin to use the words our clients use so that they can hear it for themselves, so that they can hear, because sometimes that's what it takes, right? Is us speaking in their language, not only for them to understand better, but for them to also hear what they sound like. Because sometimes we don't always hear that, right? And doing it in their
Absolutely.
language is going to be so much more powerful than inserting yours when it comes to making that connection and cultivating this relationship and trust and safe space. All right. Are we ready to go to the next one?
Number 3.
Acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process.
So that's interesting too, because it's a scary slippery slope sometimes for me, right? Because I think acknowledges is the word is chosen very deliberately. Acknowledges and respects. It doesn't say gives praise or celebrates. I use that word. I was like, oh, I shouldn't have used that word. That's a big piece here, right? We want to be able to acknowledge and respect, but without giving applause.
I think it honors who that client is. It's the honor of who they are, what they've brought to the table, and how they want to show up. That becomes that first acknowledged space that, yes, we matter, but in this space, it's about them finding their matter.
Yeah. I in class, I always say when we're talking about sincere validation in the coaching space, I always say this, just ask yourself, is it acknowledgement versus embellishment? Acknowledgement is what's there. I don't have to add on to it. I don't have to go into a full welcome to my TED Talk motivational speech, which I would love to do, but I don't have to because I'm just acknowledging what's already there, what the client has presented. So that's one of the things I absolutely think is important, acknowledgement versus embellishment.
Love that. Absolutely love that.
Well, that brings us back to the topic of sincere validation, right? When you're able to talk about what you see them as doing without embellishing it, just saying what you're sharing with me, I see that arriving on time is really important to you, right? Instead of, oh yeah, good job, you like to arrive on time, yeah, me too. But it's just acknowledging the work that they're doing in the session, the work they're doing in their life, and affirming it, but in the sense of sincerely, and with that, the sincere validation, not the compliment, not the praise.
Yeah, and I just said love it.
So they can build it for themselves and not rely on us for it.
We're not in a coaching session here, so I can tell you guys that I love everything you're saying. It's fantastic. Also, it's as simple as just acknowledging and noticing when your clients, maybe things are going right and they're not acknowledging it, right? Those little pieces where they're being harder on themselves, but they're not acknowledging the work that they have done, and just bringing that back up to the client, and reminding them, and sort of shining that light on the things they have done, maybe when they're in a space of, I didn't do X, Y, or Z, right? And respecting the work that they're doing. And that's where this piece comes. It's not, not everything is easy. It's not easy to sometimes do what they have set out to do, and respecting their process and what is happening. So shall we? Next, that dovetails beautifully, I think, into the next one. But Jen?
Say, get in the habit of the language. I want to acknowledge you for that. Practice it like with your friends and family, and then it'll just flow natural in the coaching space. Because it's not something we normally say, right?
Agreed.
I mean, we normally, hey, good job.
Well, I think too, you at that point you could actually even say, "Oh, hello, Coach Pimentel. Nice to see you." That's not what I was going to say, but you could actually ask them, if you were to acknowledge yourself for something right now, what would that be? Right? So it doesn't even have to be on us to ask that. So, all right, shall we go to number 4?
Let's do it.
Shows support, empathy, and concern for the client. Now, that doesn't mean, oh no, are you okay? Oh my gosh, what's good? Yeah. Who else wants to say anything?
We don't need to give hugs. We don't need to rescue. We don't need to do anything but show up with care, concern, candor, kindness.
We don't even need to hand a tissue.
I think
it's kind of hard to do when you're doing virtual coaching anyways, but
this is one of those things where subtlety is so tremendously powerful. I think it's when we, just by being present, curious, asking questions. Coaching is showing concern, and that's all it needs to be, right? It doesn't need to be this over the top. Just by being curious and interested and respectful, all of this is we're doing it. We're doing this. We're showing support, empathy, and concern right there.
Yeah.
Built in, kind of, at least for me.
Say, don't hug, don't touch, don't hand the tissue. Just pause and be quiet, be silent, and allow your client to express themselves in the way that they need to in that moment.
I think maybe
Same
new coaches.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think maybe new coaches have a tendency also to maybe identify their client's blocks for them sometimes when the client is expressing a perception or belief of theirs. And the coach might, oh, that sounds like a block. That sounds like it's sort of impeding the progress. Let me say something. It's not really the coach's job to like necessarily point those out. It's the client's job to identify what it is they want to work on, what their blocks are. And if their beliefs and perceptions are wrapped up into that, that might be seen as not supporting their perceptions and beliefs by calling that, hey, that's something's wrong with that belief. Something's wrong with that thought. Let's change it to try to support your goal. That's not really what we do as coaches.
I want to sort of talk into both of those spaces quickly. I think Misha's point is so valid when it comes to crying. I think the same thing can be said for silence. Absolutely. I think the same thing can be said for frustration, for all of these things that might make us uncomfortable. That's our bias. That's our thing. We've got to always stay in check with that. And I think to Anthony's point, early on in coaching, I would have this moment where, oh, I see the solution. I see I need to take them this way. I see that, these things, and I wouldn't say it out loud, but in my head, those wheels got set. And what am I doing in that moment? To Anthony's point, I am not right now. I just have gone into a advice space in my own head, right? I may not be saying it, but I have gone into a biased space in my head, and I've lost my curiosity. And I learned also, if my client isn't ready to go there, they are not going to go there, even if I'm out of my own head and be curious. That is a big label we are placing. And that's a big red flag for, hey, stop that, be curious.
So the question becomes, does it serve me, the coach, or does it serve my client?
Can I share something that Dan shared that was like life-changing for me?
Yeah.
He said that you're not just holding space for the client to have emotion. You're holding space for you to be present with someone else's emotion.
Yeah.
That was just like,
Totally.
oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
And I
let's
think
finish it off then with number 6.
Well, one quick thing too. I think a big piece, while as you're going, those are 102 students. I want you to reflect back to this once you have gone through the perception portion of 102, because we do have and I think that this is a really critical piece. There's a reason that perception piece is in 102, and this will really speak into that. And that's all. All right.
Number 6 demonstrates openness and transparency as a way to display vulnerability and build trust with the client.
What does that mean? This is a heavy one, and I'm okay with us being a little over on time for this, because there's a lot here. So
And
be human.
This one's tricky though, because in 101 we kind of talk about don't share all of who you are in your session, make this about the client, not about you. But yes, like Mike just said, we do need to be human, but where is that? It's a fine line. So who wants to
and the way, when I'm thinking of this too, with transparency as well, for especially in one-on-one, I stress this, it's okay to make a mistake. I always say progress, not perfection. So in a coaching session, you may say, hey, hold on, Misha, I'm sorry. That's not the question I wanted to ask, or maybe should have asked. So
exactly.
It's okay to be vulnerable in that space, because when we talk about building trust, that builds trust and rapport more than anything else. When they say, oh man, I don't have to be perfect because my coach is not perfect, which may be the assumption when they come into the session with you, like, hey, Coach Misha knows it all, so I'm good. I'm with the expert on my life. No, listen, I'm getting it together myself. So let me rephrase that.
I've asked clients as well that I've coached, like, hey, like, I'm all like, after I've held silence for a little bit, I'm like, hey, like, I heard what you said. Can you give me a few moments to sort of think about the kind of question I want to ask? Because I feel like right now, if I just spoke and said something, I wouldn't be as articulate, or I wouldn't have the question that I wanted. Can you give me like a beat? And all my clients have been totally okay with that.
I've also said, I don't know what to ask you right now. What do you want me to ask you?
That's huge, because the clients say, oh man, nobody's ever asked me what I think in this situation. They always just should, SHOULD. They just tell me what I should do. But when someone reflects back, like, what do you think I should say in this space? Like, oh, really? It totally shifts the perspective.
It can also be something as simple when you're virtual. We're all home. We can see Brooke's little kitty there. Yeah, my cats love to come around, especially when I'm talking. They could be as simple as that kind of announcement. My dogs bark in the background. I'm so sorry. I'll put myself on mute while you're speaking so that it doesn't interrupt your flow.
I also think it's like we can have a moment where we're human too, right? So to pretend that there might not be moments where we feel emotion, where we have something human going on with us. And I think people can tell when we aren't being real and honest. So this has to come from us being willing to be real and honest, and have those moments where we have to maybe pause for ourselves. Can we pause here for a moment? Or maybe it's one of those things where you're not in the right space as a coach to be the best coach in that situation. So you be open and honest with your client and say, hey, today I am not in a space where I can do this. I'm just being that open and honest. You don't have to give them all the reasons why, but just it's letting them know we too are human, and being honest about it, and being as transparent as we can in those moments. It's funny, when I teach Pilates, there's a while where I would get to the point where I always try to use the restroom before and after, but it will cause me physical pain if I don't. So like I reached a point with my clients where I would just let them know, hey, you keep moving. I have to run to the restroom really quick, and I will be right back. And that's human. And that is better than me being in pain and trying to teach them, right? And so it's a much more like liberal space here that I'm sharing. But that is a little bit of what this is. It's being willing to just show I'm human too. I'm not some stone wall that you're talking to. And doing so in a way, of course, that is always with our client's best interest at heart. So what is in the client's best interest?
Which, so going back to what we're talking about today, B, co-creating the relationship, right? Number 3 and number 4, establishes and maintains agreements and cultivates trust and safety. And next time, are we covering maintains presence?
Yes, we will be.
Mm-hmm.
And is it next
Absolutely.
week, or is it, do we have a live next week?
We, I think, are not going to do our live next week. We will be off for next week. So because we have Thanksgiving coming, so we're gonna be taking next Tuesday off. We'll be working. We'll be in the office, but we will not be doing our live. What does that mean, everyone? That means, so in 2 weeks, we want you to come back and visit us for the numbers 5 and 6. That will be, what's that date? Let's see, Anthony. That will be the 28th. So on November 28th, we will be back at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to continue this deep dive into our core competencies.
If you're watching from a 102 class, you don't have to wait. You can just go on to the next video.
Next video. Yeah. True
We'll
story.
be eating turkey in the meantime.
Thank you to everybody out there watching. If you have any questions, if there is something you feel like we did not cover that needs to be covered, please leave it in the comments. For those of you in 102, if you, same goes, leave it in your write-up that you have for your homework. Let us know if you have questions, if there's something that you want to know more about. That's the place to put it so that we can know what's going on. And in the comments, for those of you watching on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere you are watching, put that in the comments so that we can do that deeper dive, answer those questions for you. We absolutely want to hear from you. And then next time, we will be delving into the last one in this co-creating the relationship and moving on to number 6 in communicating effectively. So,
and like and subscribe.
Subscribe,
There, the
check out
button.
Certified Life Coach Institute, all of that good stuff.
So take our classes if you haven't.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.